the bag. They didn't have, and I treated them with samples that the detail people would give us. Delivered a few babies at home. Mostly the ones that delivered at home were from calls from the midwives. They were having difficulty, and so they would call the doctor in, and sometimes we could deliver the baby for them. And if we couldn't, we'd pack them up and send them over to Athens, Georgia, particularly the black families. They went to Athens, and the white families, we would send them to Atlanta, since we didn't have the facility for taking care of those kind of complications.
You delivered a lot of babies.
Yeah, I guess I must have delivered a couple thousand, I don't know. From well, of course, the first year that I was an intern in New Orleans, that my service delivered 1,100 babies. Now, I didn't deliver 1,100, but I delivered probably 100 of them because there were 15 or so of us on that particular service at that time. And then I delivered a bunch of them over in Lafayette, Louisiana, where I did some residency training for a year. And then in Kevin, I and Dr. Calloway, Dr. Purcell, Dr. Nesbitt, we delivered the rest of them, but Dr. Calloway and I probably delivered most of the babies in Newton County. And it's real funny, I get many a hug every day at Bojangles from somebody. I said, "Oh, you delivered a baby for me, you remember me?" And I said, "Take your clothes off, maybe I'll recognize you." You know, just cutting up with them. And so we have a lot of laughs about the house calls that make eating out of the warmer of the oven warmer of the big old wood stove, reach up in there and get a potato out of a piece of cornbread. And I've eaten a lot of meals there at people's homes while making house calls. It's very satisfying. You felt good doing it. I've oftentimes told folks it was sort of like being called to the ministry. You're called to serve it. You always answer the telephone. You didn't just let it ring. The telephone was just necessary. You just had to answer it because somebody needed you. At least that's what you assumed. So you've almost felt called. You were dedicated. The average general practitioner in Cavenden was a very dedicated person, I think. Few of them were better when they were drunk than when they were sober. I know one little story. Dr. Anderson was standing in front of the hotel, and a man came out of the hotel and says, "I'm a salesman here and visiting in Cavenden." He says, "If I were to get sick, who would be the best doctor in town?" And Dr. Anderson drew himself up and says, "Dr. Anderson." He said, "Well, tell me," says, "who's the second best doctor in town?" He said, "Dr. Anderson when he's drunk." So Dr. Anderson was a very excellent physician, and several others were very good physicians too, who imbibed heavily. I'm grateful for what has happened to me over these years. I didn't get rich, charged $3 for an office visit and $5 for a house call. And usually shot of penicillin went for $3, went for $1. Delivered the baby started off at $35 and $10 extra if it's a boy, because we circumcised all the males. Of course, prices now have changed drastically, and expenses have changed drastically, because I had an upstairs office, with all utilities, including heat and electricity, not including telephone, for $50 a month. So you could tell that I could afford to charge less. If I could be sure to be making $25,000, $30,000 a year, I felt like I was a millionaire. And I made it a point also to try, we didn't have Social Security or anything like that, so you had to sort of either be a shrewd businessman or else save in order to be able to retire. So I tried to save 10% of my gross income every year to put in a retirement account, and that plus now Social Security is what I live on.
Tell me about the farm or how you met your first wife and how you got associated with the farm.
Well, my first wife was Joan Faulkner, who I met on a blind date in Covington. She was the niece of one of the bank tellers. So we just sort of liked each other, hit it off right well. Just sort of were drawn towards each other after that first date. And the fact of the business is I was dating Chidi at the same time that I had this blind date with the woman I married, Joan Faulkner. Well, anyway, Joan and I kept dating while I was in medical school, and I still was dating Chidi some too at the same time. But Joan and I, when she graduated about the same time I did, Chidi went one direction, I went the other direction. I went into medical school, Chidi into graduate schools. So Joan and I married while I was a resident, while I was an intern in New Orleans in about 51 or 52. So I was making $10 a month, and she was teaching school. So we went on out to Louisiana to a residency training program at Lafayette General Hospital. Came back to Covington to practice. And then when her mother and father died, the farm went to Joan. And so we hunted and fished there, but we couldn't keep it up the way we wanted to. And so at the time of Joan's death, the farm went to me. Well, I knew that she really wanted her daughters to have it. So we divided the farm up into 3 lots. I had a surveyor, he divided it up, and according to the value, we tried to make it 3 lots of equal value. And then the girls drew lots, chances, I guess to say, on those lots. And it happened that Carrie drew the home place, what we call the farm. Janice drew part of the farm on the back side of the home place, and Lisa drew the part on the highway close to the home place. So all 3 of them have land right together. About each one of them had anywhere from 100 acres to 75 or 80 acres of that particular plot. Then there was another plot of about 212 acres that was divided among them also, which has lakes and ponds on it, duck ponds, very nice hunting ground, hunting lodge. And so I did a lot of my hunting in that area on the farm there. Kill my deer. My wife killed the first deer in the family. That was sort of made me embarrassed a little bit, but Joan was a pretty good shot. She shot skeet with me too. So we had a lot of fun. But I don't know whether I answer the question is tell me about the farm or not.
You were into amateur radio. How did you get into that?
Amateur radio came as sort of an accident with me. I was a Boy Scout and never got past first class signaling. For some reason, I just drew a blank on signaling. The code, Morse code, I just had a terrible time with. So I had all the requirements for moving up to the sky, all my merit badges, but since I couldn't make first class scout on account of that signaling, I just had to pass it up. So when I retired, I said one of the things I want to do when I retire is to learn the Morse code so I'd know enough to pass first class signaling of the Boy Scouts. So I got to study the Morse code and decided that, well, now I always liked electronics all my life, just piddling. So I said, why don't I just go ahead and study for an amateur radio license? And it was sort of an academic challenge at the end. And so I got learned my Morse code up 5 words a minute, I think is what we first needed to get our license. I got my speed up, and then passed my novice, well, what we call then, I guess a novice license. But anyway, I decided, well, in order to be able to really talk over around the world, I needed a better license than that. So I had to have what they call a general license. So I studied the Morse code and got my speed up to 13 words a minute, which was required for the Morse code for the test, and passed that particular test and got my general license, and that allowed me to be able to talk all over the world if I wanted to. Well, I never have really particularly wanted to, because I was taking it more as an academic challenge. But I have talked all over the United States, but now with the Morse code, which is the world standard, you might say, you can communicate much better than with voice. It penetrates the stratosphere, atmosphere, all that, much better. But I just never have really gotten much into that. But currently, I am trying to relearn the code just so I can listen in better. I've just forgotten it now. It's been 6, 7 years since I've really done any of it. They say once you learn it, you never forget it, but I don't think that's true. And the older you get, the harder it is to learn, to remember, to recall it. It's with me. But amateur radio has opened up a lot of friends to me. They have clubs which have regular meetings, and they're educational, and of course have social events too. And then you have what they call jamborees, where they'll all get together and communicate with other clubs all over the United States and even the world if they want to. I don't particularly care to try to communicate, but just getting with the guys and watch them work, listening to them, and observing. That's the fun for me. It's more the academic interest.
So you spent some time going to Africa. Can you tell me about those?
Oh yeah, that was while in my first trip was around 1964, 1965. One of my professional colleagues, Jordan Calloway, just mentioned that he was going to make the trip, wanted to know if I wanted to go. And I said, well, sure, I'd like to go, just like that, you know. And so we went with another group of doctors. It's one of these affinity group trips, these physicians from all over the United States. So we went into East Africa, Kenya, flew into Kenya went from from England, from New York to England to Rome, then on across to Uganda, stopped in Uganda, where Idi Amin just had finished up with a coup, a revolution or whatever they call it, and then flew on into Nairobi, Kenya. In Kenya, we traveled over many of the game preserves and stayed in the lodges at those game preserves. Most all of them were very posh, run by the British. We stayed in one tent camp, which was a lot of fun, but it still had all the nice things that you could need. You had a shower, you had a bathroom, and a mess hall. But I can remember that at that particular camp, it was Kilimanjaro. We look out the window and see the mountain, which was a beautiful snow-capped. Had two little peaks. They were snow-capped, and that was very impressive to me. Seeing the wild animals and the huge amounts of flamingos, pink flamingos, if I remember right. These lakes, some of these brine lakes would be just covered with them. I guess thousands of flamingos, and when they would get up in the sky, it was unbelievable. And then in those days, in the 60s, they had probably larger herds of all the wild animals. They were the migratory animals, the wildebeest, and things of that type, zebra. It was just the plains would just be covered with them, migrating from one feeding area to another. That was very impressive. In fact, I was so impressed with that trip that when I got back, I said, Joan says, we're going to have to go back. You got to see this. And so a few years later, she and I made a trip over there together. I saw much of the same thing that I had seen before, some of the same lodges, but we saw so many different lodges that it was just fantastic to be able to be down on ground level with these animals. They come up to these not feeding areas, but drinking areas. And you felt like you could almost reach out and touch them. You were so close to them because you were at ground level in a bunker of some kind, close to the water, and they'd come right on up, and you could almost smell them. They were so close to you. It was a fascinating thing. Elephants, giraffes, those impressed me a whole lot. The cheetah, watching it run, golly, it's just unbelievable the speed that animal has, 70 miles an hour, they say. And its back is very subtle. It can moves up and down. Its back itself can undulate, and they say that it can jump about 20-foot leaps when it's running. And the way the back is constructed, which is unlike any other cat, I think, makes it able to run that fast.